The reading today is Psalm 36, and it can be found on page 563 of the Pew Bibles. Psalm 36. An oracle is within my heart concerning the sinfulness of the wicked. There is no fear of God before his eyes, for in his own eyes he flatters himself too much to detect or hate his sin. The words of his mouth are wicked and deceitful. He has ceased to be wise and to do good. Even on his bed he plots evil. He commits himself to a sinful course and does not reject what is wrong. Your love, O Lord, reaches to the heavens, your faithfulness to the skies. Your righteousness is like the mighty mountains, your justice like the great deep. O Lord, you preserve both man and beast. How priceless is your unfailing love. Both high and low among men find refuge in the shadow of your wings. They feast in the abundance of your house. You give them drink from your river of delights. For with you is a fountain of life. In your light we see light. Continue your love to those who know you, your righteousness to the upright in heart. May the foot of the proud not come against me, nor the hand of the wicked drive me away. See how the evildoers lie fallen, thrown down, not able to rise. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God.
I don't know about you, but I frequently feel like the cat who got the cream. It's not even fair. The cream should have been for the family dessert, but they left it out. And I'm the winner. But how come with my track history, could I stand here and list off the blessings that God has showered on me? I've been wrenched from the grips of slavery and the vices in this world, saved from certain death, and elevated in Jesus Christ under the protection of God the Father. Taking refuge in the shadow of his wings. Verse 7 from the Psalm 36 we've just read. I'm in the family with all the privileges that involves. Cat with the cream. Why me? It doesn't seem right. But, well, I'm not going to complain. As I said, I wasn't always this grateful. In fact, I didn't even know that it was possible to get the cream. I was running around in the dark with another agenda entirely. Rather like the enemies of God in the first 4 verses of the Psalm 36 that we've just read. And the tragedy is that so many of my friends are still there in those 4 first verses though, in the Psalm. But good to have the Psalm before our eyes. If you have a Bible there, it was on page something. Psalms is easy to find. You open the Bible in the middle and they're there. Psalm 36. Good to have that before your eyes. Thank you. Mind you, though, it's going to be heavy going until we get to verse 5. It's not easy, so you'll have to bear with me in that. We need, though, to listen to those first 4 verses. David, in this psalm, is contrasting the wickedness of evil men with the amazing love of God. I don't know about you, but the description of the wicked in the first 4 verses there is really bad. I get the impression that they're nasty. Their thoughts and their actions are bad. They're plotting evil on their beds. They reject the good. They lie. They flatter themselves. Nasty piece of work. Actually, their own doing. At first glance, I can't see myself there, even my old self. Because actually, well, I'd like you to think and I think so, I'm quite a nice guy, really. And I can't even see my friends there, those who don't know the Lord. Actually, we need the words to show us the truth. We live and work in Belgium, as you know, and one of the ways we contribute is through teaching English. Francis has a few classes, mostly for well-to-do women nearly retired or retired, quite a bunch, actually. And they gather on Mondays and Thursdays at the house. You can see that because there's an array of rather smart cars parked outside the house. And they're lovely. Très gentils. Some of our best friends are in the group. And the last thing I'd say about these nice people is they're wicked. I can't. But actually, when it comes down to it, the message from God through David lets us know what's going on the inside. True, it's talking about David's enemies, but it actually gives us an insight into what's going on naturally in the heart, the center of our will. The root problem there is in verse 1. There is no fear of God in his eyes. There is no fear of God before their eyes. Leaving out God and running our lives for any other aim is the very definition of what it is to be evil. And that leads naturally to blindness. You can't even see that it's wrong, verse 2. And actually on that basis you don't know what is right and fail to act accordingly, verse 3. It flows on. And when you're alone on your bed without the guiding love of the Lord, verse 4, well, the mind wanders, it plots, it's doing what it naturally does. You see, it might have been 1000 BC that these words were written, but it's timeless. Just think of today's popular psychology. These mantras, find your own voice, cut your path, be yourself. Nothing about God. Small wonder we end up committing ourselves to a sinful course. Verse 4. We don't know any better. There's no fear of God before their eyes, and they can't even see it. David has painted the situation realistically, and it's dire. That's depravity of man's heart without God. That is the truth. Okay, that was hard going, but now, in wonderful contrast, let us drink in the love of God in the next few verses. This is the very best of poetic David, who knows and loves God firsthand. And you can see that from verse 5. Let's just listen. Your love, Lord, reaches to the heavens. Your faithfulness to the skies. Your righteousness is like the highest mountains. Your justice like the great deep. You, Lord, preserve both people and animals. How does David describe the love of the Lord? It's high, it's deep, it's perfectly just, it's extensive, both people and animals. It's priceless, unfailing, abundant, life-giving. Wow, it's just so extreme. The love of God. In fact, it's so extreme that the biblical authors, the biblical translators, have difficulty translating the original Old Testament word. The word in the original is hesed, or however they might have pronounced it. Something like covenantal, steadfast, unfailing love. They can't succinctly put it. The principle comes from the alliances back in Genesis and Exodus. God loved his people, but he also gave his word. He gave his word. He promised. Now, when God promises, when God writes it in his word, it's certain. 100% certain. More certain than even creation, than the material existence of what he created, that we consider to be fairly solid. God's covenantal love is not just an emotion. It's just that. It's solid. So when we read verse 7, how priceless is your unfailing love, O God, it really is priceless. God wants you to know with 100% certainty this morning, he says, I love you. Are you right there with David? Are you there in this part of the psalm? Are you like David, taking refuge in the shadow of his wings? Are you feasting? Are you drinking in from the river of delights? And then look at this, almost a byproduct. With a worshipful fear of the Lord, live the life, and then verse 9, in your light we see light. We see light. We understand and we know God. We can know God. See light, see light. It also means, actually in the original, it means to live life to the full. Seeing, continuing to see light. And that's wonderful. Living to the full. Let's just take stock of the contrast we have this morning. What picture is David painting for us? On the one hand, to live life in darkness, going our own way with no fear of God before our eyes. On the other hand, living life in the light, by the light, taking refuge in the shadow of his wings, feasting on his abundance. Wow. Two groups of people. Well, all this is actually wonderful, but I do still have some questions this morning, even so, when I read the psalm. First of all, how can David be so judgmental? We all know that he's no angel. The sordid details of his affair and subsequent murder have been published for some 3,000 years now. Well, I think actually the fact that he can shows that it's possible to pass from one group to another. The fact that he can give us the details of those that don't know God means that actually he can recognize it's possible to be in the other group, to be forgiven, to walk right like David. See, David is clearly describing these two sorts of people, those who love the Lord and walk in his ways on the one hand, and those who don't follow God and who are left by nature evil. It may be uncomfortable, but that's the truth. But so if we actually admit that our hearts without love of God are inclined to our own sweet way, further away from God, is there actually a way back to God to walk in his path and to benefit so wonderfully from his blessings? Can the cat get the cream even if he doesn't deserve it? And David is telling us this morning, yes. And I think the clue is in just that it is David telling us. Or moreover, perhaps, in the office of the king. You see, God appointed David as king over his people Israel. And the office of king over the people of God is pointing forward to the king. In the office, we anticipate the great King David's greater son, the King, God's Son, King Jesus Christ. That's what it's pointing forward to. The whole idea of the monarchy, the kingship, is pointing us forward to King Jesus. So how can, I suppose another question, how can David be so categoric about his enemies? Well, he enlarges on the problem in the next psalm, Psalm 37, and I believe that's coming up in your series on the Psalms. How can the godless always seem to be okay, is the question in Psalm 37. The Psalms frequently come in groups, so 37 follows 36, and they treat similar issues. But for now, consider this. David is God's anointed king. And as God's anointed, his enemies are therefore enemies of God. Actually, every one of us sinners starts out as an enemy of God. But if we look at the trend of the psalm, if we look and see where the psalm is going, with this idea that it's the king, God's anointed king, that is saying so, the king is facing opposition from evil men, and then he declares his trust in the love of the Father. And finally, at the end of the psalm, he prays, "May the foot of the proud not come against me, nor the hand of the wicked drive me away." Does that actually remind you of Jesus? Jesus, the king who faced rising opposition, placed his trust in God the Father, and then prayed, "May this cup be taken from me," knowing all the while that the foot of the proud hearts of men would and did come against him. But you see the pattern in the psalm? It's reflecting the life of Jesus. But it is through his death, wonderfully, that we can pass from one group to the other. Actually, from death to life. John, in his gospel, Jesus says, "Yet to all who did receive him," Jesus, "to those who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God." That's my story. I'm the cat that got the cream. I can see myself now in verses 1 to 4. I didn't then. I was too pumped up to detect sin and certainly not to hate sin. Sin is throughout us. Do you see verse 3 to 4? In verse 3 to 4, there's thought, there's word, and there's deed. Sinful thought, sinful word, sinful deed. All three are of course, going the wrong way. Wrong way. It's a bit like the Mario Kart game. I don't know whether you or children played Mario Kart. Ours used to. You're driving a car it's a video game, and you're driving a car, and if you go the wrong way, you turn around, and you're going against the flow. A note comes up on the screen and says, "Wrong way." Someone says, "Wrong way," and you actually have to turn your car around. It's a bit like a life of sin. You're going the wrong way, and you have to turn it round, or rather God has to turn it round for you. I was going my own way, wrong way. There was little or no fear of God before my eyes. Then, through the simple, loving invitation of an old school friend, he invited me along to his church, ever so simple. And I began ever so slowly to see the real issues. And it was through that community of loving people that God worked persistently on me to turn me round completely. Until, trusting only in the wonderful work of Christ on the cross, I asked forgiveness for all my self-righteous, selfish, career-orientated life as I was then an engineering student. It was by his hesed love that I came, and by his hesed love that I stay. He keeps me. That's my story. Excuse me. Let's come back to the psalm, because David ends with a prayer that is quite a warning. Verse 10, he says that the Lord's love would continue for those who know you. That's his prayer. Now, given all he said in verses 5 to 9, we know that he will be trusting in just that. He knows that it's true. He prays then for the protection, for his protection as king in verse 11. And he finishes with a lead balloon, I'll say. Verse 12. What a way to finish. See how the evildoers lie fallen, thrown down, not able to rise. Well, Psalm 37 continues the theme, and it's a classic on the ultimate frightening end of those who, with no fear of God before their eyes, who do not know God. How will they end? It's not good. The end is not good for those who refuse the hesed love of God and persist in cutting their own path. I might be the cat who's got the cream, but there's cream enough to go round. Simon said I could slip in a word about mission, and it fits in well with the theme of today, being that we're mission partners with Crosslinks and with St. James's. So what has Psalm 36 got to say about mission? Well, not much, you may say. Except that it clearly points out two ways to live and points to a way from darkness to light. That's mission. And that's the point. The Lord's hesed love has not stopped. And amazingly, through his people are moving from one group to another through his love, turning from darkness to light. And why is that? Because God is still a God of mission. He's still out there. He's still doing mission. Think of just what God did in and through Jesus, the Son. That was mission. He was. He sent. He came. Jesus faced the music and died. But he was the music and lived. Resurrection music. And he has not stopped now. He is. He goes. He sends. And the news is too good to keep to ourselves. So we are involved in mission by very nature of the fact that we are under the hesed love of God. We're compelled to continue in God's mission. We're incredibly grateful to be part of the mission of St. James's. Thank you. Thank you. You've included us in your mission. What a privilege. And that's why we pray in this service and other times for Kip and Rachel, for Luke and Whitney, for Matthew Leung, for the work of Yasha in Stoke-on-Trent. And, of course, as we've been reminded of the multiple things that are going on in the parish, in the church, in the benefice, all to do with God's hesed love coming out and moving on, moving in our community. I'm the cat that got the cream. I am so grateful. Blessings without number. And many of you are. There's more cream. There's cream to go around. And God has given us that wonderful responsibility to be cream sharers. I coined a new phrase, just come to me. Let's be cream sharers under God's grace because of God's wonderful hesed love for us. Thank you.